Chapter 3 Nightmares and Hallucinations. They are given to all kinds of marvelous beliefs, are subject to trances and visions, and frequently see strange sights and hear music and voices in the air. The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. I didn't get very much sleep over the next several days. School was starting in 2 weeks, but that was the least of my worries. Ever since the day of the funeral, I'd been having nightmares. I couldn't remember any of them, but they were always there, at the corner of my mind and on the very edge of my consciousness. Then it started getting worse. I'd wake up suddenly, my body drenched in sweat, while my eyes frantically searched the darkened corners of my room. I usually saw the shape of a person, like someone was in the room with me. If I concentrated and strained my eyes hard enough, the shape would disappear. I knew it was nothing more than shadows on the wall, but each night, for those brief couple of seconds, my heart pounded in sheer terror. More than once I found myself calling out Kristen's name, asking, pleading with her to be there, knowing in my head that she wasn't, but hoping in my heart that somehow she was. I thought I was going crazy. After the fourth night in a row of nightmares and hallucinations, I think I really did start to go a little crazy. I struggled to stay up at night, sleeping only when morning came. I didn't feel rested at all, but at least it kept the nightmares at bay. Keeping myself occupied all night, though, was a whole different set of problems. I tried reading first. I found a book that I hadn't started yet, and it was interesting enough to hold my attention through the first night. But that afternoon I was too tired to go get any new books, and that was a problem when midnight came around again. Flipping through some old magazines killed time the second night, but it didn't work quite as well, and I kept nodding off. Morning took a long time to arrive when my body was demanding that I sleep. It was the next night that I ended up calling Kristen. After checking my email, including every old account I'd ever set up, I had only managed to kill about an hour. There were several new shopping websites to browse, but they didn't really hold my attention either. What I was really missing was Kristen's body icon, signaling that she was online too. We almost always signed on within minutes of each other. It was strange not seeing her screen name pop up automatically. With a heavy sigh, I hit the sign off button and watched as the screen shut down in front of me. Spinning slowly back and forth on my chair, I scanned the top of my desk. Several piles of paper were stacked in one corner, and a couple of CDs were propped up by a small jewelry box. My cell phone was plugged into an adapter on the printer stand, blinking a red light at me, signaling that it was fully charged. I picked up the phone and automatically hit the number 1 to speed dial Kristen. It wasn't until the voicemail message started playing that I realized what an idiot I was. The sound of her voice was so normal and familiar, so real. I had called her cell phone almost every day before she disappeared and never given it a second thought. Short messages, long messages, funny messages, even angry messages. I had left them all. Such a small, insignificant thing to do, but now I realized how important each one of those messages had really been. A loud beep on the other end got my attention. I didn't know if I should say anything. Holding my breath for a second, I paused and then spoke in a rush of jumbled words and thoughts. Hey, Kristen, it's me. I don't know what to say or even why I'm doing this. It's not like this is stupid. I'm sorry. I hung up the phone, feeling frustrated and angry at myself for calling. It wasn't like she was going to call me back. Wherever she was, her cell phone wasn't with her. She'd left it at home with a dead battery the night she disappeared. Grabbing a blank piece of paper from my desk, I started doodling. Small pictures, bizarre designs, crazy symbols, anything that came to mind. I scribbled these things over and over again until I had to grab a fresh sheet. Then I started writing down my thoughts, about everything and about nothing. By dawn I had filed 8 sheets of paper with random words. It was an exhausting process, but now that it was morning I fell into a deep sleep. I slept through breakfast again and really felt like skipping lunch too, but Mom gave me a strange look as I stumbled into the kitchen. Are you feeling okay, Abby? She asked, putting a hand to my forehead. Yeah, I'm okay, I admitted, sitting down at the table. I've had a hard time getting to sleep lately. Carrying over 2 bottles of water, she sat down next to me and slid one over. I stared at my hands resting on the tabletop, not paying attention to anything else. I really should go back to bed. I'm exhausted. Do you think you're not sleeping well because of the funeral? Mom's sudden question startled me. That probably has something to do with it. The conversation from the funeral home sprang to mind, and I heard those women talking about Kristen again. Or it could have something to do with the fact that some people in this town don't have any common decency or good manners. She frowned. What do you mean? I mean that this town is so freaking small, all it takes is one person to start an untrue rumor, and before you know it, it's become the absolute truth. Frustration filled my voice. You know what I'm talking about, Mom, and you know it's not right. I heard some people saying that Kristen either killed herself or was into drugs. They shouldn't be spreading rumors like that. It's not fair to her family, and it's not fair to her. Patting my arm, she put on her sympathetic tone. I know how you feel, Abby, but there's not much we can do. People talk. It will die down eventually. You don't understand, and you don't know how I feel, I snapped. Or you would do something to stop the ones who talk about Kristen behind her back. Use your position on the town council. Do something about them. I can't control what the people in town think, Abigail. You know that. She stood up and walked over to the dishwasher. Just ignore them. It will all blow over soon. I couldn't believe that she was telling me to just ignore them. I was supposed to stand by and let people talk about my friend? No way. Well, I can do something about it, Mom. I felt anger taking over now. I was furious. I can stand up for my best friend, even if you're not willing to. Stalking out of the kitchen, I left the water behind and pounded my way upstairs to my bedroom. I slammed the door shut to let her know that I meant what I'd said. She would probably yell at me later for doing that, but I didn't care. I only meant to close my eyes for a minute or two when I lay down on my bed, but I must have fallen asleep, because the next thing I knew, Mom was leaning over me and calling my name. Struggling to a sitting position, I yawned loudly and rubbed my eyes. Tired. Just taking a nap. Why did you wake me up? I mumbled. How would you like to go to that new herb store with me? She said. The one by the cabin? I asked ruggedly, but it's an hour away. Do you really want to go there? Sure, why not? She shrugged. I have a couple of papers to drop off at Mayor Arca's house along the way, but other than that, I'm up for it if you are. I was too tired to argue about whether or not this was a trip for me or Mayor Arca, so I let that one go. At least she was trying. Okay, I forced a smile. Let's go. We headed down to the car and grabbed some grapes to eat on my way out. Skipping breakfast and lunch so often was finally catching up with me. It didn't take me long to finish them off, and I popped the last one into my mouth before climbing into the passenger side and buckling my seatbelt. Mom got into the car too and put the key in the ignition but didn't turn it on. I tensed, waiting to see if a lecture on how I should control my anger was coming my way. Abby, she started. Clearing her throat once, she tried again. If you ever need to talk about Kristen or anything else, well, I wanted to let you know that you can always come to me. If I can't help, we can find you a professional to talk to. Her blue eyes were full of concern, showing the tiny wrinkles around them. Thanks, Mom. I smiled weakly. I'll let you know if I need something. I must have looked as close to the edge as I felt if Mom was talking about me seeing a professional. My response seemed to satisfy her, and she smiled back at me, looking relieved that her part was over. She started up the car and we headed toward the Archer residence. 10 minutes later we arrived at their front door and Mom promised she'd be out in 5 minutes. As her door slammed shut, I grabbed the pen and small notebook from the glove box, knowing that I'd be in for a wait. Mom's 5 minutes were usually more like 20. I started making a list of all the things that I hoped to find at this new store and was completely lost in thought when Mom's door opened again. Sorry that took so long, she said, climbing into her seat and adjusting the rearview mirror. I had to go over a couple of things with the mayor. Not a problem, I responded, still occupied with my list. I added tester vials and bergamot oil to the page. I was running low on both of those. We got back on the main road again, and I put the notebook down as soon as I felt myself begin to get sleepy. I knew I wasn't going to last long. The sound of a door opening startled me, and I woke up with a jerk. Looking over at Mom, I smiled sheepishly. Sorry, I fell asleep. I guess I was still pretty tired. Don't worry about it, she said. We're here. I craned my neck to take everything in as I climbed out of the car. A large green metal sign with a glossy finish greeted us, proclaiming the name of the store to be A Time and Reason, and I fell in love with it instantly. The shop itself looked like it had once lived a past life as a grand old turn-of-the-century house, complete with gingerbread trim, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a gabled roof. The outside was painted in several varying shades of green and magenta that complemented each other wonderfully, and I knew that this was the type of store I wanted to own one day. As we stepped inside, I saw that it was even better than I had hoped for. Not only did the store have plenty of herbs available, but there were jar and bottle sections, vials and sample kits, and packaging supplies of every kind. They also carried almost every type of perfume oil known to mankind. I was in heaven. I could have happily spent weeks here. They all had almost everything on my list. After browsing for about 45 minutes, I figured that I was probably treading close to Mom's patience limit, so I started narrowing down my choices. I picked up several sample-size tester vials, a couple of large amber bottles, and a new set of glass droppers. Mom finally caught up with me in front of the oil section. What's the bergamot oil for? She asked, watching me choose which size bottle I wanted. You know that autumn harvest perfume I made for you last year? I want to make that one again this year, but with a more earthy tone to it. I debated between ginger and cranberry essential oil as I answered her. I absolutely loved that perfume, she said. Can you make me one for winter this year too? Something with a Christmassy smell to it? Sure, I replied, adding peppermint, vanilla, and balsam oils to my collection. Then I grabbed small bottles of both the ginger and the cranberry and added those to my pile as well. The last thing I picked up before tearing myself away from the shelf was a huge bottle of jojoba oil. Now I had everything I needed. I'm finally ready to go, I said, staggering under the weight of my selections as I led the way up to the front store. This place is absolutely gorgeous, I told the lady standing behind the register once I'd made it there. The owners did a great job decorating it, and the supplies are amazing. She laughed. Well, thank you. I decorated it myself, and I appreciate the kind compliments. Do you have a website that I can order some more stuff from? I asked eagerly. I usually get my supplies from a shop by my house, but they're really tiny and they don't even have half of what you have here. She laughed again and nodded, handing me a business card with the store name and website address boldly printed on it. I tucked it safely into my back pocket as she started ringing up my items. Mom surprised me by paying for my rather hefty bill without telling me to put anything back, and also picked up a classical music CD for herself. I grinned from ear to ear as we waved goodbye to the store owner and headed outside. Thanks for taking me here, Mom, I said, piling the bags into the car. It was fun. She just smiled at me and we climbed into our seats. We didn't really talk on the way home, but she put on the CD she'd picked up at the register, and it filled the silence nicely. It was a calm and quiet ride back, and I actually managed to stay awake. Later that night, surrounded by my recent purchases, I was eager to finally get back into my work. Since Kristen's abrupt disappearance, I'd lost all of my passion for making perfume. My heart just wasn't in it, so I'd given up completely. But tonight it was different. I felt centered again, for the first time in a long time. I was ready to tackle a new project. I didn't have any worries about staying awake as I readied my workspace. Every time I made a new perfume, it required steady concentration and copious amounts of note-taking throughout the entire process, so I knew it would keep me busy. Midnight came and went, and I barely even noticed. By 5 a.m. I was surprised that it was already time for me to try to get some sleep. I slept soundly and actually woke up feeling eager and excited later that afternoon. Creating new perfumes was a tricky business. It involved several rounds of testing different oil combinations, looking for reactions, checking notes, comparing samples, writing down new notes and then starting the whole process all over again with each new scent choice. And I loved every minute of it. There were 1,000,001 possible scent combinations, and it was up to me to find the ones that complemented each other. Sometimes it was difficult, but it was never ever boring. And the best thing about the whole process was that each night seemed to fly by. They didn't drag on anymore, threatening me with shadows and dreams. I had started working a little earlier each night and sleeping a little less during the day. After perfecting the formula for Mom's autumn harvest perfume and creating a brand new winter scent, I decided to do something different. Something that filled me with fear and more than a little trepidation, but something I knew I had to do. I was going to make a perfume for Kristen. She had asked me several times before to make one specifically for her, but I'd always hesitated. It was a challenging thing to do, creating scents for people that not only smelled good, but also mixed well with their body chemistry. Since Kristen was my best friend, I always felt extra pressure to make sure her signature scent would fit her perfectly. I never wanted to disappoint her in any way, but this time I decided to give it a try. It ended up being much harder than I had ever thought it would be. I couldn't find scents that blended well, and after several hours of laboring on it, I gave in. Standing up from my work table, I walked around the room to stretch my legs. A headache was starting to pound between my eyes, and I rubbed my temples with my fingertips. There was no way I could keep working with strong scents while I had a headache. I wouldn't be able to concentrate. Grabbing several pillows from the foot of my bed, I carried them over to the window seat and piled them up high. Hopefully, if I just rested my eyes for a while, the headache would go away. Hopefully. I set it into my nest of pillows and rested my cheek against the window pane. It was cool and helped to ease the pounding in my head a little. I sighed at the temporary relief. This spot was pretty comfortable. I could stay like this for hours. When I opened my eyes again, the world outside had gone suspiciously orange. Then I realized it was sunrise. I had slept through the night without any nightmares. Over the next couple of days, I slowly readjusted my sleeping schedule. I didn't fall asleep until after midnight, but at least I wasn't sleeping during the day anymore. Which was a very good thing because school started on Monday.